Ever wondered why your HOA president smiles like an angel, but her eyes scream, "I own you"? What if those endless fines weren't about your lawn, but a slow-motion murder plot hidden in your tap water? And what if the only way to stop a Karen who thinks she's God was to become the new god of her water supply? The gravel crunched like tiny bones under Karen Caldwell's glossy black Escalade the moment it rolled into our driveway in Sunnyvale Heights. My stomach did that familiar twist I perfected over 3 years of her neighborly visits. Every time that chrome monster appeared, it meant another made-up violation, another threat wrapped in fake concern, another step closer to driving my mom out of the only home she'd known since Dad passed. I was out front watering Mom's prized heirloom roses, bright defiant splashes of red against our faded siding, when her window hummed down exactly 3 inches. Just enough to let her voice slither out like syrup over broken glass. "Jordan, darling," she cooed. "All pearls and perfection. Those wind chimes on your porch, they simply must go." Section 4.2 of the Covenants clearly states no audible decorations over 45 decibels. The board has been so patient with you. I set the hose down slowly, letting the water pool around my sneakers like a tiny flood of resentment. They've hung there since Dad died. Karen, 7 years. Mom says the sound reminds her he's still watching over us. Her Botox smile never reached her eyes. Rules are rules. Jordan, I've been lenient, God knows I have, but the board is unanimous. Remove them by Friday, or it's $200 per chime. 8 chimes. That's $1,600. Cash. Or we lien the house. She said it like she was offering me a cookie recipe, not threatening to bankrupt a widow with stage 2 kidney issues. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just stared at her while Mom's frail silhouette appeared behind the screen door, one hand gripping the frame because standing straight had become a luxury lately. "Was that Karen again?" Mom called, voice thin as tissue paper. "Just HOA stuff." I lied, forcing cheer into my tone. I couldn't tell her the truth, not when every new fine seemed to coincide with another dizzy spell. Another trip to the ER where doctors scratched their heads and muttered, "Environmental factors maybe?" Karen's taillights disappeared down the cul-de-sac, and I felt it again, that cold prickle of suspicion that had been growing like mold behind the walls. Mom's health had tanked right after she publicly questioned Karen's plan to double HOA dues for a luxury pickleball pavilion. Coincidence? My gut said no. But who poisons an old lady over pickleball? I laughed bitterly at the thought. Only a Karen. That night the suspicion sprouted legs. I took the trash out, and there he was, Doug Caldwell, Karen's spineless husband, loitering by our water meter in the dark, phone flashlight painting his guilty face blue. No dog. No reason. Just standing there pretending to scroll while his other hand hovered near the shut-off valve. "Everything okay?" "Doug," I called, voice tight. He jumped like I'd caught him stealing jewelry. "Just walking." He didn't even own walking shoes. He scurried off, and I stood there frozen, heart hammering the rhythm of a nightmare I wasn't ready to name. The next morning, I cornered Elaine Rodriguez across the street, the neighborhood's walking Wikipedia of grudges. "Seen Doug near our meter lately?" I asked low. Elaine's eyes narrowed behind her cat-eye glasses. The Caldwells don't walk anything but their egos. And between us, girl, your mom was the only one who spoke against Karen's fee hike at the last meeting. She's been blacklisting anyone who voted no. The words landed like antifreeze in my veins. Cold. Toxic. Undeniable. This wasn't random HOA hell. This was targeted. Personal. Lethal. Mom collapsed that same afternoon. Yellowish skin. Shaking hands. Couldn't keep water down. ER doctors ran every test. Could be a virus, one said. Or something in the environment. I didn't mention the meter. Not yet. I needed proof before I sounded like the crazy daughter accusing the HOA queen of attempted murder. Back home, I knelt by that meter at dawn. Tiny blue droplets clung to the rocks like guilty tears. My phone buzzed. Hospital again. Mom had passed out in the doctor's office. Toxicology pending. I drove to the hardware store like a woman possessed and bought the best hidden camera on the shelf. That night, under cover of darkness and pure rage, I wired it into the old oak tree. Lens aimed straight at the valve. If Doug came back, I'd have him. And if Karen was behind it, God help her. 3 days later, Mom was still hospitalized, kidneys screaming, and another HOA notice slapped on our door. Fined for unauthorized medical equipment because I'd left her walker on the porch while she fought for her life. I crumpled it in my fist just as my phone pinged. Camera alert. Someone at the meter right now. I sprinted outside and caught Doug mid-pour. Karen idling in the SUV, engine purring like a satisfied cat. What the hell are you doing to our water? I roared. Karen rolled her window down with theatrical calm. Jordan, dear, you're clearly stressed. Your poor mother's illness is clouding your judgment. They sped off before I could film the film. But I already had the first recording. Clear as crystal, Doug emptying a small bottle labeled antifreeze into our line while Karen kept watch, smirking like she'd just won the neighborhood beauty pageant. I sat on the porch shaking, watching the footage on loop. Black humor hit me like a slap. Karen Caldwell, president of Sunnyvale Heights, self-appointed guardian of property values, was literally poisoning the woman who dared question her. The woman who baked cookies for block parties. The woman whose only crime was loving wind chimes that reminded her of her dead husband. I laughed until I cried because it was either that or burn their house down. The lab confirmed it 48 hours later. Ethylene glycol. Low dose. Chronic exposure. Perfect for making someone sick slowly. Driving them broke with medical bills. Forcing a sale. Call the police, the text said. I did. Officer Martinez listened. Watched the video. Then shrugged. We see someone pouring something. But we can't prove what. Could be anything. Trace chemicals happen. She promised to investigate. Translation. Karen's golf buddies with the chief would make sure nothing stuck. That's when I stopped playing defense. While Mom lay in that hospital bed, pale and fading, I remembered something Dad once muttered about Sunnyvale Heights having its own private water utility, Clearwater LLC, not city water, a relic from the 80s. I dug through his old boxes until I found the paperwork. The company was in bankruptcy. Chapter 11. Assets up for grabs. I called my college roommate Jamie, now an environmental lawyer. At 2 a.m. They're poisoning her, I whispered. Slow. Just enough to hurt. Jamie went quiet, then said the words that changed everything. If you control the water, you control the neighborhood. How much do you have in savings? I drained my 401k. Took a home equity loan that would make Dad roll in his grave. And 3 weeks later I sat in a sterile conference room signing papers. The bankruptcy attorney slid the folder across the table like it was a winning lottery ticket. Congratulations. You now own Clearwater LLC. All meters. All valves. All obligations. I drove home in a daze. Folder on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. I owned the water. Every drop in Sunnyvale Heights flowed through my new company. Karen's empire ran on the same pipes she'd tainted. The power felt electric, terrifying, intoxicating, righteous. The counter-strike began at dawn. I logged into the ancient billing system and found the clause buried in the original contract. Emergency rate adjustments allowed without board approval. I typed the notice with shaking fingers, but a steady heart. Effective immediately, water rates for all Sunnyvale Heights residents would increase 400%. I printed copies, stuffed the community mailbox, and changed the locks on the little Clearwater office that was now mine. My phone exploded before noon. Malcolm Reed, HOA treasurer, left frantic voicemails. Then Karen herself called, voice stripped of all sugar. What the hell do you think you're doing? She hissed. This is illegal. Actually, I replied coolly, quoting chapter and verse. It's perfectly legal. Read your own contract. Karen, the one you love weaponizing. Silence stretched. Then I laid out my terms. Voice ice cold. 1. Public confession of what you and Doug did to my mom. 2. You and your husband sell your house and leave Sunnyvale Heights forever. 3. You set up a medical fund for mom, $200,000 and counting. Refuse. And tomorrow I shut off every meter except mine. Lawyers already confirmed it. She hung up. 20 minutes later, a mass text hit every resident. Emergency, HOA meeting tonight. Neighborhood terrorist holding our water hostage. The community center was packed and furious when I walked in. Karen stood at the front with a projector slide titled Water Terrorist, and my face blown up like a mugshot. "Here he is," she announced dramatically. "The man who thinks he can bankrupt us all over some silly wind chimes." I took the mic. My voice started shaky, but grew steel. I played the camera footage on the big screen, Doug pouring antifreeze, Karen smirking in the getaway car. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then stories poured out. Mrs. Alvarez's mysterious rashes. Mr. Patel's dog that died after drinking from the hose. Everyone who'd ever crossed Karen suddenly remembering coincidences. The meeting turned into a riot. I slipped out while Karen faced the mob she'd created. That night my mailbox was smashed and liars spray-painted across the garage. But the next morning an anonymous email arrived with a new video, Karen and Doug in their garage. Doug saying, "Just a few drops and problem neighbors solve themselves," while Karen laughed and handed him another bottle. I forwarded it to the entire neighborhood directory and the police. Sirens lit up the street by noon. Karen and Doug were led away in cuffs, pearls and all. Mom came home 63 days later to a street lined with cheering neighbors. Ted and Elaine had cleaned the house, stocked the fridge, and placed the wind chimes back up, now joined by 20 new ones from the community. Each one a middle finger to Karen's memory. The garden gnomes? Wait. No, we never had gnomes. But the new community garden is blooming where Karen's pickleball dream died. Months later, they pleaded guilty. 12 years each, plus restitution. During impact statements, Mom looked straight at Karen and said quietly, "I forgive you, but I'll never forget the sound of those chimes you tried to silence." I transferred Clearwater LLC to a community trust. The profits now pay medical bills for every family Karen ever targeted. They renamed the garden the Margaret Ellis Healing Garden, right under the sign that used to say, "No audible decorations." I still keep the cameras running. Some lessons you only learn once. And some Karens only learn when the water they poisoned finally flows the other way. The fallout tasted sweeter than any revenge fantasy I'd ever spun. Karen's perfect world, manicured lawns, matching mailboxes, zero personality, crumbled the moment the first water bill hit mailboxes at 4 times the price. People who'd nodded along to her rules for years suddenly found their voices. Elaine started a petition. Ted organized a block party where everyone wore wind chime earrings in solidarity. Even the board members who'd been her lapdogs began distancing themselves on social media with carefully worded posts about new leadership opportunities. But the real satisfaction came in small, delicious doses. I was watering Mom's roses again, real ones this time. Not just survival mode, when Karen's former best friend, Linda, stopped by carrying a casserole and a guilty look. "I never knew," she whispered. "She always said you two were troublemakers exaggerating." I just smiled and offered her a glass of tap water. She declined. Smart woman. The police investigation moved faster once the second video dropped. Turns out Doug had been sloppy, kept receipts for bulk antifreeze purchases for the car. The DA called it attempted murder with a HOA twist. Local news picked it up. Suburban poison plot. HOA president allegedly tainted neighbor's water over pickleball fees. Karen's face was everywhere. Pearls replaced by orange jumpsuit. The same woman who once lectured me about community standards now begged for plea deals on camera. Mom regained some color in her cheeks. Doctors said the kidney damage was permanent, but manageable with the trust fund money. She sat on the porch one evening, wind chimes tinkling softly, and said, "Jordan, I never wanted you to risk everything for me." I squeezed her hand. "Mom, you risked everything raising me after Dad died. This was just returning the favor, with interest." The community trust grew. We added solar panels to the garden. No HOA fine could touch them now. Residents started sharing stories in a private Facebook group called Survivors of Caldwell. One woman admitted Karen had been slowly poisoning her dog for barking. Another found old emails where Karen joked about natural selection via fines. The black humor of it all kept hitting me in waves. The queen of cleanliness literally dumping car fluid into drinking water because an old lady dared say dues are high enough. 6 months after the arrests, I stood in the garden at the ribbon cutting for the Margaret Ellis Healing Garden. Kids played near the new wind chime sculpture made from recycled HOA violation notices. Elaine gave a speech. Ted handed me a plaque. And somewhere in the back row I spotted Linda wearing a t-shirt that read, "I survived Karen Caldwell." The laughter that rippled through the crowd was the sound of justice finally ringing louder than any wind chime Karen ever tried to ban. I still get the occasional late-night text from Jamie. "You realize you're basically a HOA supervillain now, right?" I laugh every time. Because the real plot twist wasn't buying the water company. It was proving that the quiet daughter everyone pitted, the one Karen publicly called unstable and overreacting, could flip the entire power structure with patience. Proof. In a little bankruptcy law, Karen and Doug are serving time in separate facilities. Last I heard, she's writing letters to the parole board claiming it was all a misunderstanding about water chemistry. Doug just stares at the wall. The neighborhood sleeps better. The roses bloom brighter. And every time I turn on the tap, I hear those wind chimes in my head, Dad's voice whispering, "You did good, kid." In the end, this story isn't really about poison or water bills. It's about what happens when ordinary people stop swallowing ridiculous rules from ridiculous people. Patience beats power plays. Proof beats pearls. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is making the bully drink from the same poisoned well she dug, then charging her 400% for the privilege. Stay sharp out there. Neighbors. Your HOA Karen might be smiling, but your water meter knows the truth.